Hi there, my name is Paul. I'm a creative designer and expert on prototyping in Protopie. We're going to go through this course making beautiful interactive and dynamic prototypes using Protopie. Throughout the time spent on this course, you will learn totally all the features and tools in Protopie. We'll also go through real-world practical and applicable examples and also really fun real-world projects. This course is for people new to prototyping and beginners on Protopie, and also those advanced on Protopie but want to up their skills. We'll start from the very beginning, following up step by step from basic to advanced. We'll start with understanding how Protopie works. We'll explore its interface. We'll cover all the basic features. You will learn how to import your scenes from other design tools, tips on recording your prototype, implementing a scrolling or paging feature. You will master how to use all features and tools, exploring all triggers, features like touch triggers, mouse triggers, key triggers, input triggers, sensor triggers on your prototypes, all responses like using a real-life camera feature, moving, scaling, rotating layers, and more, using conditions, adding links of URLs and in-app links to your prototype, how to use formulas and variables for more dynamic prototyping like creating an interactive spinner, using components for repetitive interactions. You would also master how to use Protopie's feature of voice prototyping and all its various tools and real-world applications, controlling your prototype with just your voice. I will show you how to share your prototype with others and all other fun tips and tricks to make your prototyping easier and more fun. And even a section on the real-world prototyping of an app, and website project. You're going to learn just about everything on prototyping, plus so much more. And by the end of this course, you're going to be a pro at prototyping, so you could share with your friends your new skills in Protopie. So if you're a beginner on prototyping or advanced, or you're just new to Protopie, or probably you have used it but forgotten how some features work, take this course and follow me, and together we'll make beautiful and dynamic interactive prototypes in Protopie. Hey there, okay, before we go deeper into this course, there are some things you need to do. The first is to download and install Protopie Player on your mobile device from the official website on protopie.io. We would also be using the Protopie Player to check prototypes in real time. So when you download it, you can connect it to your Protopie Studio on your PC using USB or same Wi-Fi network. Now, if you're going with USB, you are going to have to make sure you have a debugging set to enabled. Then you can just connect through USB, launch the Protopie Player on your mobile device, and select play on your PC from the top here. You can also connect through Wi-Fi. Also, you can upload to Protopie Cloud. Then it saves on your personal account, which you can access anywhere in the world, and even share the link with others to check your prototype. You could also log into the cloud on your Protopie Player, accessing your uploaded power files, and even save them locally on your mobile device. When on your prototype on your Protopie Player, there are some gestures to navigate through this two fingers tap right here. Okay, the second thing you're gonna need is resources. So there are some resources at some sections and even at the end of this video. Resources like files used on this course, exercise files, and finished Pi version of each examples and project done. In case yours do not work out well, you may want to check them out. And also a PDF cheat sheet of keyboard shortcuts and tips in Protopie. For the shortcuts, I may actually forget to say them out loud during the course, so I compiled this PDF to help you out. Check it out. Okay, let's begin. Hi there, we're going to have to start by downloading Protopie software. I hope you already have your Adobe XD, Figma, or Sketch installed on your PC, as we'll be doing our design on any of them. Now go over to your browser and go to www.protopie.io. This should take you directly to the home page, which you have the option to select download at the top. When you click on download, it will take you to the download page. You have the option to select your operating system, Mac OS, Windows, or Windows 32-bit. Now, Protopie has some cool plans over here. The pricing goes for about $11 for individual and $42 for a team. It's totally free for students and teachers. So if you fall in any of this category, you should apply for access to their program. Of course, you have to send them some evidence of you being a student or a teacher. For more info, go over to their plans page, which is over here. Alright, back to business. On the download page, I'm going to select my Windows 64 because right now I'm using Windows 64-bit. Download and install it. You have the option to install for or take the trial for 30 days rather. And if you are an individual, a team, a student, a teacher, you should log in with your details. I also have some useful exercise files for you. Download from the course page and follow along. Alright, let's jump into the next video. Hi there, this video is going to explain in simple terms the concept behind Protopie. We'll go through how it works using some everyday example. Okay, Protopie concept is based on how objects move in the real world, and interaction is made in Protopie by combining objects, trigger, and response. Objects are just assets used in our design. It could be a text, a shape, an image. You get the drift. Triggers are what causes a change in the object, so it could be a tap, a drag, mouse over, mouse out. We'll see more when we go deeper into the course. Response are after effects of the trigger. We're going to take an example. Let's say I have to go to work in the morning. I get into my car. My car is the object. I want it to get moving, so I tap on the throttle. The tap is the trigger. Thereafter, my car starts moving. That's the response. Let's just take a look at some examples right down over here. Over here at example 1, we have a circle as our object. When I do a mouse over on it, which is the trigger, it scales a little bit and also changes color, which is the response. Over at example 2, the y-axis of the first square is changed to the y-axis of the second square. When we drag the first square along the y-axis, it moves. The move is also changed to the move of the second square. If you got this, congrats, you now understand how Protopie works, and I will see you in the next video. Hi folks, this video is all about explaining Protopie interface. Let's jump right into it. Opening up Protopie software, the first thing you're going to see is the window that shows you some quick links at more resources so you can check on documentation, tutorials, community, or support. Right now, you can open a new Pi project or an existing Pi project. I'm going to hit on new Pi project. At the center, we can see the workspace and we can activate between device frame and no device frame. I'm going to leave it on device frame. We can also zoom in and out by hitting Control on the keyboard and scroll on the mouse for Windows users. That is Command and scroll for Mac users. We can also zoom in and out right here by hitting the plus or the minus right here. Okay, right now for pan, you can also hit the space bar on the keyboard and drag with your mouse to pan. Also, the ruler measurement on the device goes from the top to the bottom and from left to right. So right now I have my device screen, which is iPhone 11 Pro, 375 pixels by 812 pixels, and the origin starts from 0, which is right over here at the top left. I'm going to show you what I mean by that. So right now I have my pen tool, and I'm going to show you what I mean by the measurements, the ruler measurements. From the top to the bottom goes my 812 pixels, and from the left to right goes my 375 pixels. Origin starts at 0 right over here. This is 812 pixels, and this is 375 pixels. So it changes from the change of device you choose. I'm just going to get rid of this right now. At the top, we have more options to toggle between other layers or other panels rather. Over at the left, we have our layer panel where we see all our assets. And on this panel, we have our scene and our components panel. I'm going to check on scene panel first. On scene panel, we have where we can show all our projects and even create more scenes. So we can see all our scenes on our project. On components panel, we can insert reusable interactions created by other people or created by us, personal or public libraries. We have the variable panel right down here where we can make use of interactions that are dynamic, that has to do with dynamic values. We can also change our preferences on the settings, and I'm not going to bother myself right now about this, but you can check it out yourself. I'm going to hit on cancel, and over at the right we have our interaction panel where we make really cool interactions, and we can also modify interactions right over here. There is the property area where we have our align box right over here, and we also have our property preview right over here. Like you can see, we have our device of 812 in height and 375 in width. This is the property edit panel where you make changes to property values. Right here, you can import from Adobe XD, Figma, or Sketch. There is an option to insert image right from here, and there's also an option to insert media, video, audio, camera, or a LOTI file. You can also choose to insert a shape or a text, a container, or a component. Component is turned off right now because we don't have any component on our project. Okay, right over here, you can choose the device screen size you want. If you are using an iOS or you're prototyping for Android, desktop, or even custom, you can select the width and height, click OK. Right now, I'm going to click cancel. We can preview our prototype right here by hitting on preview, and you can see the preview. Right down here, you can click on this place to record your prototype. I'm going to hit on cancel and close that right now. And if you have a Protopie player installed on your device or your mobile device, you can click right here to scan and check your prototypes as you design or as you make the interactions on your mobile devices. Right here, we can upload to the cloud, and we can also access the cloud here also. Understanding the interface is the second step in getting you up to speed with Protopie. The first step was the concept. Okay, that's all for now, and I will see you in the next video. Hi there, this video is all about preparations before starting your Protopie project. We will also cover best arrangement practices. Before doing your prototyping on Protopie, you would have done your design on either Adobe XD, Figma, or Sketch. This is because Protopie is not a design tool, but a prototyping tool, so it doesn't have lots of features for design. I've seen some people get confused on this, and they ask if you can actually do your design on Protopie. You can't that much because it's not a design tool, sorry. I already have an app design called Pickpock, a design similar to TikTok app on Adobe XD. It's in your exercise file under class file folder. So go ahead and open it. About the best practices, it's basically just having to properly name your artboards and asset layer for easy identification. So if you were doing a design for a project, you're going to have to make sure you give a right name to different layers. Layers are found down here in Adobe XD. Check for the names on items on each artboard. If they are good to go, then you also are good to go. Also, if you have a component in any of your artboards, you will have to ungroup that component, else you will have some restrictions when working on Protopie. I didn't put a system status bar on my artboard on Adobe XD. You will later see why I did that. Go over to an open Protopie, start a new project. That's it. Let's go into the next video. Hi there, this video is all about importing your artboards from your design tool to Protopie. I would be using Adobe XD. You can try Figma and Sketch. They all follow the same procedure. Okay, we're going to start by importing this our first artboard called Launch. Come over to Protopie. Make sure that you're on scene 1 since it's going to be our first artboard that we will be importing on scene 1. Click on Import, and at the moment, Protopie has the option to select from Adobe XD, Figma, or Sketch, and I will be selecting from Adobe XD. Make sure you are selecting Launch, and the import size is at 3 times. And the layer to import, you are selecting all layer structures. And at re-import options, it basically means if you already have imported that same artboard before you make changes, and you've made some changes to the design, you have to select update layers to re-import that same design and update your changes. For now, I'm just going to click on the import. We now have our launch artboard on scene 1, and I'm going to rename that at the scene panel right over here. Remember, we renamed for easy identification. I would add another scene, and I'm going to import my second artboard called onboarding. Make sure we are selecting the same settings, and I'm going to click import. I would rename this also, and I would do the same to the rest artboard marked with the black checkbox marked below their artboards on my Adobe XD project, importing and renaming the scenes. So do the same. I would speed through this because it's quite repetitive. Okay, we now have all our artboards imported on the various scenes and rename them as appropriately. All right, that's it. I'll see you in the next video. Hey there, this video will be covering all aspects on layers on Protopie. We'll also see how to put a system status bar on our scenes and giving it the right feel. Okay folks, there was a reason why I didn't put a system status bar on my Artboards on Adobe XD. The reason is because I can also add a system status bar over at the Properties Edit panel right here on Protopie. So we'll click anywhere outside our scene, go over to the Properties Edit panel, click on System Status Bar as you can see right here. And at the moment the content shows black and I can change it to white, which is the appropriate color for the scene. I'm going to go over to my second scene, which is onboarding, and I'm going to change the system status bar right to the appropriate color. Okay, it's on black, which is the appropriate and perfect color for this scene. I'm just going to do the same to all the rest scene, and I want you to do the same, and I will do that in a jiffy. That's it, we are through putting our system status bar on all scenes with their appropriate color. Let us create another scene so that we can use as our explanation scene, and I'm going to call it explanation scene. Right here I created another scene, call it explanation scene. Okay, we are now on our explanation scene and I'm going to change the scene screen size to maybe an Android screen size. So you can see it can easily be changed. I'm going to select Android, select Galaxy X7, click on OK. So we are now on explanation scene, Galaxy X7 screen size. Just like other design tools, we can also insert various layers into our scenes on Protopie. These layers can be modified on the properties panel right here. There's the image layer at the top where you have an option to select an image. You can select a JPEG, a PNG, or a GIF file. I'm going to select this image right here and open it. As you can see, on inserting the image, it inserted on the origin of our scene, which is at the top left over here. There's the video layer, audio, camera, and Lottie layer right at the media panel here. I'm going to import them one after the other and show you how they work. We now have an image, a video, an audio, a camera, and a Lottie file right on our explanation scene. And they do not work right on their own except being triggered. And I'm going to show you what I mean by that. In this case, I will be using a start trigger and give it a response to our media layers right over here. So I'm going to come over to my interaction panel, add trigger. I'm going to select start and I'm going to select start after jump. And I'm going to come over to our video layer, tap on it, give it a response of playback. And maybe I'm just going to select loop. I'm going to come right over to our audio layer, tap on the same playback response, give it a loop if I want a loop, and I'm going to come over to our Lottie file, tap on response of playback, and give it another loop. Let's check our preview and we can see how they work. So on the start, you can see the Lottie file down right here, and our camera layer is right over here, and our video layer is right over here playing. And I'm going to cancel this preview right now. I'm going to get rid of all of them, Ctrl A and delete. On the shape panel, we have the rectangle layer, oval, and iOS background blur layer. Let me start by inserting the rectangle layer. And as you can see, they all start at the origin. And we can change the properties on the properties edit panel. We can give it a radius, and we can also change the color. I'm going to add this color right over here, and I'm going to get rid of this start because I don't need it. I'm going to scale this a little bit down right here, and I'm going to add from shape an iOS background blur. An iOS background blur adds a beautiful iOS blur to your scene, and we can also insert text layer from right at the top over here and text. We can play with its properties. You can mess around with that. And I'm quickly going to insert an input layer also. Input layer are useful for putting some keyboard inputs. You can come over here and mess with its properties. We can put a placeholder and you can make that anything you like. We can also change the keyboard options from text to URL to email or number or text password or number password. Right at the preview, we can see it over here. Once we click on tutorial, you have the option to input what you want. And we can also put an SVG code from other design or paste it right from our File Explorer, and I'm going to show you what I mean by that. Going to my File Explorer, I have the option to insert an SVG code. I got an SVG code right here called clock spinner. I'm going to drag that and drop it right on my scene, and this is the SVG code. You can also convert to shape, and from that you can mess with the settings of the SVG code, or rather the colors or whatever. Okay, there's also a container layer in which you will see in the next video. And that's just all about this video. All right, let's jump into the next video. Hi, have you ever wondered how some cool scrolling or paging are done in some prototypes? This video is all about containers, scrolling, and paging. Okay, in other design to it may be called groups, but in Protopie it's called containers. Just like groups, containers are used to group numbers of layers and control them simultaneously. We simply create a container by inserting a container right from over here and selecting container. Then what we can easily do is to create a layer of maybe a shape, a rectangle, and we simply insert the rectangle inside the container, and we've created a container and we can control it. We can also do that. I'm just going to get rid of all of this. We can also do that by, let's say we select a rectangle, and we can do that by right clicking, group layers with container, and now we have a container also. I'm just going to get rid of all of this, Ctrl A and delete. Furthermore, containers can be used on scrolling and paging and are made by putting layers into scrolling or paging container. Let us take a look at the scrolling. I'm going to select scroll and I'm going to scale this a little bit right down here. I'm going to create several rectangular boxes and I'm going to scale them and give them a different color so we know the particular rectangular box we are on. I'm going to give this a separate color. Let's say I choose this color over here, and I'm going to hold alternate and drag, and I'm going to give this one another color, and I'm going to do the same for another one, and we have 3 now, and I'm going to give this one another color. So I'm going to place this 3 inside the container that I created, the scroll container, and let's see the preview right from over here. So I'm going to hit on preview and we can see how the scroll container works. I'm going to close this right now. Same rule applies for the paging container. I'm just going to simply come over here and maybe ungroup it. Then I'm just going to select this in a paging manner. I'll drag this, let's say I drag it over here, and I'm going to drag this one also over here. And I'm going to create a paging container and I'm going to scale it to, let's say, the screen size. And I'm going to place each of them inside the paging container. Let's see the preview right over here. And we can see the paging container, very easy to create. I'm going to close this right now. We can also adjust the properties on the scroll or paging container. Let's say I want some changes on this paging container right here. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to come over to the property edit panel and we can see the option to make non-scroll. We can even change it back to scrolling, or we can change it to paging. And we can also select the overscroll to bounce or none. I'm going to show you what that does. So coming over to our preview, we can see what bounce does to a paging container, and I'm going to close this right now. I can select make layers touchable right down here. This basically means that even though it is grouped, I can still touch the layers in the containers. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to get rid of all of this, Ctrl A and delete. I'm going to create 2 rectangles right here, and I'm going to create another one, and I'm just going to put the 2 of them in a container. group layers with container. And what I'm going to do is that I'm going to come over here, select the container, come down here and make layers touchable. So let's see the effect. I'm just going to add an interaction and let's see how that works. So coming over to our rectangle, I'm going to select one, add a trigger, let's say a tap trigger, and I want maybe this one to scale when I tap that first one, and maybe scale to 120 by 120. And let's see the preview right over here. So when we tap on one, we can see that the other scales. I'm just going to close this right now and I'm going to get rid of all of this, Ctrl A and delete. We can also set constraints on layer, and I'm going to show you what I mean by constraints on layer. Let's create a shape, let's say a rectangle, and I'm going to zoom in. Let's create a shape, let's say a rectangle, and let's make that a little bit small, and let's create another container and let's place it right there in the shape. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this rectangle, come over to my property edit panel, and you will see an option for constraints, fixed width or fixed height. I'm going to remove fixed width and fixed height, and let's see, putting the rectangle inside the container, let's see the effect that does. Scaling the container, we see that we can also scale the rectangle. But if I remove this fixed width, if I make it fixed width and fixed height, come over to container, and we see that scaling the container has no effect with the rectangle. We can also choose to make the alignment. Let me say I'm coming over here to make the alignment at the bottom, and right here I'm going to scale it. Let's see how that works. You can see how it moves. Okay, I'm going to get rid of all of this, Ctrl A and delete. I'm going to create another container and I'm going to put some rectangles inside this container. Let me quickly create some other. I'm going to put one right maybe over here, hold down Alt key, place one over here and place one over here. I'm going to quickly put them inside the container, and inside the container I'm going to click out and we can see our container, the size right down here. Coming over here, click sub layers, and we can see that the underlining lower layers are invisible. But if I select unclip sub layers, that is, I'm deactivating it, we can all see the lower layers now. And that's just a wrap for containers. Let's zoom off to the next video. Hi there, this video will cover recording. Basically, after you're done with your prototypes, you may want to show it to your clients in the video format. This is done by coming to preview. Right here I got a paging container, and what I would do is that I will come over to my record, and right now Protopie has the maximum limit of 5 minutes record. You can easily bypass this by using a screen recording software like QuickTime, Bandicam, or Camtasia. There are several options to choose from. Your operating system may even have its own screen recording software pre-installed, and what it does is you just make your interactions and it comes over here to record, and once you are done you hit on stop, it converts to MP4 and you have your video. You save your video. You just tap here, save your video. Right now I'm going to click cancel and I'm going to close this. That's all for recording. I will see you in the next video. Hey there, we'll be discussing about tap and double tap triggers in Protopie in this video. This would be a very brief tutorial, so I got my assets on my scenes already created. You can create same assets and follow along, or open it up on your exercise file under class folder. Tap and double tap pie file. On tap, it basically means when a tip of a finger, mouse pointer, or other touch point touches the screen, thereby triggering a response. Let's take a look at what I mean. I'm going to select my tap oval asset right here. Go over to add a trigger. Let's select tap. We can also select the layer right from over here. And I'm going to add the move response. Remember, the ruler measurement goes from the top to the bottom for y-axis and goes from left to right for x-axis. And also, I kept my asset origin at the center. As you can see, I find it more convenient though. That's why the position shows 80 for x and 158 for y. So on the move response, I want it to move to x equals to 300 and y on the same axis. So I would select y as 158. That is 300 for x and 158 for y. Let us take a look at the preview. It works as expected. I'm going to close this right now. Let's go on to double tap. On double tap, I'm going to add a double tap trigger. Let's select the move response also. And this time, I'm wanting to move to x 300 and y as 444 on same axis. As you can see, it's on 80 originally and 444 for y-axis. So I'm going to select x as 300 and y as 444. Let's see the preview right over here. And we can see how it works. I'm going to close this right now. My double tap asset is obviously small. Okay, let me add another response, and this time I'm going to select the scale. And I want it to scale to a width of 100 and to a height of 100. So I'm going to select 100 by 100. And let's see the preview right from over here. So on double tap, it scales and moves also. Okay, it works as expected. That's all for this class. Let's move on to the next video. Hey, what's going on guys? This video discussion is based on touch down and touch up triggers in Protopie. So I got my assets on my screen already created. You can create same assets and follow along, or open it up in your exercise file under class file folder, touch down and touch up pile file. Touch down basically means the finger or pointer touching the screen to trigger a response. And touch up is the opposite, meaning a finger leaving the screen or letting go. It's different from a tap trigger in the sense that tap trigger is activated when the finger or the touch point just taps and lets go of the screen. Let me explain what I mean. I'm going to add a touch down trigger to this our assets over here. And I'm going to select a scale response to scale to 200 in width and 200 in height. Let's see the preview right over here. This is touch down. I'm going to close this right now. Now let's add a touch up trigger to the same asset and let's see how it goes. So I'm going to add a touch up trigger and I'm going to add scale as a response back to 100 by 100. That is 100 in width and 100 in height. Let's check the preview right over here. So touch, as you can see, touch down, touch up, touch down, touch up. That's just how it works. And I'm going to close this right over here. So touch down and touch up may sometimes work together or separately. That's all for this video. Let's go on to the next video. Hey there, this video discussion will cover the long press and the fling trigger on Protopie. So I got my assets on my scene already created. You can create same asset and follow along or open it up in your exercise file under class file folder, long press and fling pile file. Let's take a look at long press first. Long press is triggered when the finger or touch point is raised after a specified amount of time. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to add a long press trigger to this our assets. I will select long press and I'm going to set the pressing time in seconds to 1 second. This just literally means that the duration of our long press before it's being triggered would be 1 second. And I'm going to select a move response and I'm going to select X to be 300 and Y to be same axis as 158. That is move to X 300 and to Y on same axis 158. Let's take a look at the preview right over here. So I'm going to tap, nothing works, and I'm going to long press right now for 1 second. And we can see it moves over at that distance. I'm going to close this right now. Let's go over to the Fling asset right over here. Fling is just swiping across your screen basically in a set of direction. And let's see how it works. I'm going to add a Fling trigger to this our asset, and I'm going to select Fling, and I'm going to select Fling in the right direction. That is pointing to the right direction. Let's use a color change as the response for this one. I'm going to select the color of, you can select any color. I'm going to select this color, and let's take a look at the preview right over here. So selecting the preview, I'm going to fling or rather swipe to the right direction, and I expect a color change. Let's take a look. And the color changes. I'm going to close this right now, and everything works as expected. That's all for long press and fling. And that's all for this video. I will see you in the next video. Hey, what's going on guys? This video covers the pull trigger and the drag trigger on Protopie. So I got my assets and my scenes already created. You can create same assets and follow along, or open it up in your exercise file under class file folder, pull and drag file. Let's start with the pull trigger. Pull works more like true or false statements. If pulled in a specific direction to a specified point, do this response. But if not pulled in that specified direction to that specified point, return back to origin. Let's take a look at how it works. So I got a rectangle asset to pull, and beneath it is another rectangle asset as background with another color. I want some portion displayed when I pull the top asset. So I add a pull trigger to the top rectangular asset, and I set the direction to the left and the distance to 155. Let's check the preview on how it works. You can see this is just how it works. I'm going to close this right over here. Let's add a response to it. Let's say a border response. Select a response and select border. I'm going to select black as a response, and I'm going to make the border maybe 3 width. Let's check the preview right now, and we can see how it works. Okay, let's close this right now. Drag is basically just dragging the assets across the screen in a specified direction. Let's add a drag trigger to this asset and set a move response. So I'm going to add a trigger. I'm going to select drag trigger, and I'm going to select a response as move. We have the option to move in any of these directions. I'm just going to select just this direction, and let's just see on the preview how it works. So on our preview, we can see I can drag this any way and any direction. So to recap, the pull only works like a true or false. If pulled to a certain direction, this should take place. If not, it should return back, just like how it's working now, returns back. But if pulled to a certain direction and a specified distance, move, do this response, and the drag just drags to the direction that you specified. Okay, I'm going to close this right now. That's just all for pull and drag, and let's move on to the next video. Hey, what's going on guys? This video is all about the ping trigger and the rotate trigger in Protopie. So I got my assets and my scene already created. You can create same assets and follow along, or open it up in your exercise file under the file folder, pinch and rotate pie file. Let's take a look at pinch trigger first. Pinch trigger basically works on 2 fingers or touch points touching the screen to either pull towards each other or away from each other, just like your zoom in and zoom out when viewing a picture or so on your device. Let's take a look at how it works. I'm going to select this our pinch trigger asset right here, and I'm going to add a trigger, and I'm going to select pinch, and for that I'm going to also add a response, and I'm going to select scale, and we have the option to select any of this direction for scale. I'm going to select just this direction, and I'm going to make sure that our pinch trigger is on its origin, because I will be using the origin as our pivot point. And the limit just basically means that in here we can set the minimum limit for the width and the height of the asset if scaled down, and also we can set the maximum limit for the width and the height if scaled up. Okay, let's check the preview right from over here. Now I'm using a touchscreen PC. This may not work if you are using a non-touchscreen PC. Let's see how the pinch works. And you can see pinch out and pinch in. I'm going to close this right now. Let's add a limit now to our scale. Now I'm going to select the scale. Right now the scale is on 150 by 150 originally. So I'm going to set the minimum limit to 120 by 120. And I'm going to set the maximum scale limit to 200 by 200. Let's check the preview right from over here. Now we can see that the scale has a maximum limit and a minimum limit of which it cannot exceed. I'm going to close this right now also. Let's go over to rotate. On rotate, it's triggered when two fingers turn in the same direction, touching the screen. Let's take a look on that. I'm going to add a rotate trigger to this our asset, and I'm going to select a response on rotate, and the pivot point, I'm going to select it at origin. Let's check the preview right from over here. And it rotates perfectly. And that's just how it works. I'm going to close this right now. That's all for this video. I will see you in the next video. Hey, what's going on guys? This video discussion is based on the start trigger in Protopie. So I got my assets on my scene already created on scene 1 and scene 2. It's a simple low fidelity wireframe, so you can create same asset and follow along, or open it up in your exercise file under class file folder, startpie file. A start trigger is automatically activated when jumping to another scene or when a prototype is run. Let's see this cool micro interaction on today's class. What I call a scene asset transition animation, different from just a normal transition of just fade, slide in and slide out, in the sense that you make the transition by animating assets on the scene. Let's see how this is made. Okay, so on my scene 1, I'm going to add a tap trigger to this asset right over here, and what I want is when a user taps on this, the welcome user moves to the right, and also this asset right here moves and scales to the upper right. So to do this, I'm going to add a tap trigger to this right here, and I'm going to select tap, and I want the response of this profile to be moved also. So I'm going to select move for this profile, and I want it to move to x-axis of 244 and y-axis of minus 255. I'm going to select the easing to quad, and I want the start delay to be on 0.5. Also, I want this oval to move also to this right over here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a move response, and I want it to move to 244 for the x-axis and minus 205 for the y-axis. And I'm going to set the easing to quad and start delay to 0.5 also. Okay. Also, I want them to also scale along as they're moving to that direction. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scale this our profile icon right here. I'm going to tap on scale, and I want it to scale to a width of 23 by 23. That's 23 in width and 23 in height. I'm going to check the easing to quad, and also I'm going to set the start delay to 0.5. And also right now I'm going to also scale this. I'm going to add scale, and I want it to scale to 42 in width and 42 in height. I'm going to set the easing to quad also, and the start delay to be on 0.5. And what I want to do right now is I want this welcome user to move to the right. So to do this, I'm going to add a response to this welcome user, and I'm going to select move, and I want it to move to x500 and y492. I'm going to set the easing to quad right also, and the start delay I will set it to 0. Then also I'm going to add a jump response because I want when a user taps on this right here, it jumps into another scene. So I'm going to add a jump response to this also, and once the user taps on that, it jumps to scene 2, and I'm going to set the start delay to 0.7. Let's see how it looks on the preview. So coming to preview, tap on this. Perfect. I'm going to close this right now. I'm going to go over to our scene 2. On scene 2, I have some assets on popular category which are invisible right now, and I'm going to bring that right up, and I'm going to set the opacity to 100 so you can see it clearly. I also have some assets down here. So on start of this scene, I want the audio right here to play, and I want each of these containers to show one after the other, and also I want these two to come up. To do this, I'm going to add a start trigger, and what I want right now is for my first container to be set to opacity of 100. I'm going to set the easing also to quad and leave the start delay at 0. I'm going to add another opacity to this our second container opacity response to 100 and easing to quad, start delay on 0.5. Then this third one also, I'm going to add an opacity, and I want the opacity to be on 100 and easing to be on quad and start delay to be on 0.8. I'm going to also set a move response for this container right here, and I want it to move to a x-axis of 23.5 and y of 617. I'm going to set the easing right now to bounce, and also I'm going to set the delay to 1.3. I'm going to also add a response to this also, and I want it to move to x of 23.5 and the y of 738. I'm going to set the easing to bounce also, and the start delay, I'm going to set it to 1.6. Okay, we're done with that. Then also this our audio right here, I want it to play on the start, so I'm going to add a playback so it plays on the start of this scene. Okay, that's all for now. I'm going to reduce the opacity of this back to 0. Let's check the preview right from over here. So on preview, we can see how it works. I'm going to go over to my scene 1. Okay, I'm going to check the preview right from over here, and when I tap on this icon, it moves as expected with that sound also. That's all about this start trigger. I hope you enjoyed these little micro interactions about start trigger, and that's all for this video. Let's go over to the next video. Hey, what's going on guys? This video discussion would cover all about range in Protopie. So I got my assets on my scenes already created on scene 1, scene 2, scene 3 and scene 4. You can create same assets and follow along, or open it up in your exercise file on the class file folder range power file. The thing to note about range is that we are always working with the range of a property of an asset or a layer on the screen as the condition for a particular or set of response to take place. The property of the asset may be range of the y or x axis, range of the height or width, range of the scale, and so on. They are all detailed in the range trigger properties. So let's say we have a rectangular asset on top here. Remember, the ruler measurement goes from the top to the bottom for y axis and left to right for x axis. So we have at the top of the y axis 0 pixels here, goes down to 536 and also goes down to 1080 over here. So let's say we want our rectangular asset to change in color if it passes this line. We have to set the range for the y-axis of this rectangular asset. That is, if it passes this point on the y-axis, the 536 pixels point, it should change its color. That is, if the y-axis of rectangle is greater than or equal to 536, it should change its color to red as the response. Let's see how we make the range triggers in Protopie. I want this rectangle to change its color if it comes below this 300 pixels point. So I'm going to add a drag trigger to this rectangular asset followed by a move response. So I'm going to set the move response to vertical. Now it moves vertically on the preview. I'm going to close this right now. I'm not going to add a range trigger to it. I'm going to select range And I'm going to add a color change as the response. I'm going to change it to, let's say, a color green. I'm going to click on this color. Then I'm going to set the range of value to be on the y-axis. I'm going to select y, and we can see it right here, y of rectangle 1. Set A to 300. This means that if 300 is less than or equal to the y-axis value of our rectangular asset, it should trigger the response. So the y-axis of our rectangular asset right now is on 191 presently. 300 isn't less than or equal to 191, so no change right over here, just as you can see on the preview. I'm going to close this. But when it comes down below the 300 points, that is 300 downwards, any value of 300 downwards, even if it's 301, satisfy the condition. That is 300 less than or equal to 301 and goes 302 and just go like that. So it's going to cause a change. Let's check the preview right over again. So go down and it changes to green. Let's go over to our scene 2 and take a look at another example. So I'm going to add same trigger and response we did in scene 1. I'm going to select the drag and I'm going to select move still, and I want it to move on the vertical axis, which is on the y-axis, and I'm going to add another trigger and I'm going to select range. This time around I'm going to select the second one and I'm going to change this x to the y-axis, and we can see that now it shows y of rectangle 1 less than or equal to b. This means that if y is anything below 300 or equal to 300, it should trigger the same change. Right now, y on our rectangle is on 414, so no change can take place. I'm going to add this and I'm going to change the color to, let's say, same green. And right now we can check the preview. I'm now going to set the range to 300. That is y of rectangle 1 less than or equal to 300. So we can check it right here on our preview. So right now y of rectangle 1 originally is on 414, so no change. But when it goes up, let's check it. When it goes up, it changes to green, as we can see. I'm going to close this right now and I'm going to go over to our scene 3. I'm going to do the same similar trigger and response. Add, drag, and set to move, and I'm going to add range and I'm going to set the color to green. This time I'm going to choose the third one and I'm going to make sure our rectangle is on the y-axis, and I'm going to input the value of A as 188 and the value for B as 388 over here. What this means is that if y of rectangle 1 is greater than or equal to 188 and less than or equal to 388, which is our B, it should trigger the change. As we can see on the preview right here, I'm going to take this down and we can see it triggers a change. And I'm going to close this right now. I'm going to also bring this down over here, and let's check the preview again from our range. When I take it up, it also triggers the change. So the range is from 188 to 388. I'm going to close this right now and I'm going to go over to my scene 4. I'm going to add the same trigger and response we did in our scene 3. I'm going to add drag and I'm going to add move and move vertically, and I'm going to also select range and I'm going to also make the color change, select green, and I'm going to make sure we are on the y-axis. And this time I'm going to select the fourth one and I'm going to make A as 188 and I'm going to select B as 388. So what this means is that if y of rectangle 1 is less than or equal to 188, or 388 is less than or equal to y of rectangle 1, it should trigger the change. Let's check the preview from right over here. So from the preview, we can see that from range of 188 to 388, it remains blue. But if I take it up, it changes. Also, I'm going to check it right here from taking it down. And if I take it down, it changes color also. So the range falls anywhere outside this 188 and 388 pixel. I'm going to close this right now. And that's just all about this video. Keep watching for more. Let's go over to the next video. Hey, what's going on, guys? This video discussion is based on the chain trigger in Protopie. So I got my assets on my scenes already created on scene 1 and scene 2. You can create same assets and follow along or open it up in your exercise file under class file folder, chain pie file. Chain trigger is just simply mapping the property of one layer to the property of another layer. In other terms, the change in the property of one layer causes the change in the property of the other layer. So the other layer which is changing is mapped to the first layer causing the change. Just like the y-axis change of this second rectangle asset is mapped to the y-axis change of the first rectangle asset. Let's check how it works. So I'm going to first add a drag trigger to this our first rectangle asset. Then I'm also going to add a move response, and we can select vertical or horizontal. For this video, I'm going to be using vertical. I'm now going to add a chain trigger to the same first rectangle asset. Remember, our first rectangle asset is moving on the y-axis, just like as it is right here. I'm going to close this right now. So I'm going to add a chain trigger to this first rectangle asset. I'm going to go to add trigger and I'm going to select chain. So I would like to map, or rather chain, the y-axis move of this our first rectangle asset to the y-axis move of this our second rectangle asset. So I would select y for the y-axis, and I want the y-axis change of the first rectangle asset to be mapped to the move in the y-axis change of the second asset. So I'm going to select move, and in here is where our mapping in range takes place. I'm going to explain in simple terms. Right here, it shows in mapping y of rectangle 1 is changed to the move of rectangle 2. I'm going to select rectangle 2 for the move. So our mapping shows y of rectangle 1 is changed to the move of rectangle 2. Now let's do the mapping right over here. This first column is for the y range of the rectangle 1, and the second and third place is for the x and y move of rectangle 2 respectively. What this means is that when our rectangle 1 y-axis is at 320, the move of rectangle 2 should be on x 274, and the y, which is 320, should be on 320. So maybe I want these two assets to move in the y-axis in unison. What am I going to do? Remember, all our assets are in origin of the middle, and the second one is also at the center origin. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to select the y range of the first asset, which is rectangle 1, and I'm going to select it when it's at 50. The x-axis of rectangle 2 should remain the same, and the y-axis of rectangle 2 should be 50. And when the y of rectangle 1 is at, let's say, 640, I want the x-axis of move of rectangle 2 to remain at 274 and the y-axis to be at 640 also. Let's check the preview right from over here. So on the preview, we can see they both move on unison. I'm going to close this right now. Let's make another interaction, and this time let's do it on the reverse. So I'm going to move each asset to the opposite y-axis. Now let's modify the mapping right from over here. So on the range of y of rectangle 1, what I wanted to do is that when the y-axis of our first rectangle asset is at, let's check the position, it's at 50. When the y-axis of our first rectangle asset is at 50, I'm going to leave this at 50. I want the x-axis of our rectangle 2 to be at 274, and I want the y-axis of our rectangle 2 to be at 590, which is on right now. As you can see, the y-axis of our rectangle 2 is at 590. And when the y-axis of our rectangle 1 is at 590. I want the x-axis of our rectangle to be at 274 same, and I want the y-axis to be on 50. So let's check the preview right from over here. And as you can see the preview, once we go up and down, it goes in the opposite direction. I'm going to close this right now, and I'm going to go over to my scene 2. And on the scene 2, we have a paging navigation, and I want the indicator to move as I move from one menu to the other. To do this, I'm going to uncheck this clip sublayers so that you can see our underlying asset in the paging container. Let's do some calculations. Our scene width is 360 pixels, and each of the rectangular assets in the paging container is 360 in weight also, and I got 3 right here. So that's 3 times 360 equals to 1080 in weight. That's the total length of width of the assets in our paging container. Also, the paging navigation indicator also has to be at 120 in weight, which is over here, since our scene is on 360, and if we divide 360 by 3, since it's going to move from here, menu 1 to menu 2 to menu 3, if we divide 360 by 3, we have 120. I hope you got that. Let's make the interaction right now. So I'm going to select the paging container, and I'm going to add a chain trigger, and I'm going to select scroll, make sure it's on scroll, and I'm also going to add a response, and I want the response to be a move. I'm going to select the move to my page indicator. So when my scroll is at position 0, which is the x-axis position of our first asset right over here, I want the x of the move page indicator to be at 0 also, and I want the y also to be at 53. Then when the scroll is at 720, which is our last asset right here, as you can see, our last asset shows x 720. I want the x of move indicator to be at 240, and I want the y also to remain at 53. Let's check the preview right from over here, and as you can see, when I move, it moves from menu 1 to menu 2 to menu 3, and it also moves back and forth. So I'm going to close this right now. That's just all for this video. Let's jump onto the next video. Hey, what's going on, guys? This video discussion is based on the detect trigger in Protopie. So I got my assets on my scene already created. You can create same assets and follow along, or open it up in your exercise file under class file folder, detect py file. Detect trigger basically just sits and waits to detect a particular or rather specified change in the property of a layer or variable. Like when I drag this asset, nothing happens, but when I tap on it, it changes color and scales. This is because I already set a detect trigger to detect change in the asset's color. And if it does detect a change in the asset's color, it should scale. Let's see how it's done. I'm going to add a drag trigger to this our asset right here, followed by a move response, and I'm going to select move, and I'm going to select this move just so you can differentiate from a detect trigger. This particular interaction isn't part of the interaction making up the detect trigger though. I'm going to add a tap trigger right here also, and I'm going to select a color change, and I'm going to select maybe this color. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to add a detect trigger to this our asset again right over here, and I'm going to select detect, and this time around I'm going to select fill color, as it's going to detect the change in the color of this our asset. And I'm going to select scale, and I want it to scale to a width of 200 by 200. So I'm going to select 200 by 200, and let's check the preview and see how it works. So when I drag on it, nothing happens, and when I tap on it, it detects a change in the color and scales as a response. I'm going to close this right now. Alright, that's all for this video. Let's zoom off to the next video.